The film opens with our lead, Chris, who refuses to work for his rich father and wishes to remain a pleasure seeker in his 30s. He skips his father's board meeting to attend his young girlfriend's birthday party, but she doesn't let him in because of how drunk he is. Chris still doesn't care, and invites his friends to join him in drinking outside the party. When he drives home drunk, he crashes his car and gets hospitalized. When his friend drops him off at his house the next day, he sees his maid, Grace, arriving late for work. He scolds her for not cleaning the house, but she insists that she gets paid for her work in advance so she can go for a checkup, as she's ill. Chris ignores her needs and asks her to continue working instead. The following day, Chris calls his father at the office and asks him to pay his salary, but his father reminds him of the concept of salary, which is earned by people who actually work. He shames Chris for not making a single dime at his age, but Chris doesn't have a care in this world, as his goal is to live life to the fullest instead of getting caught up in serious stuff. His father refuses to pay him anymore and asks him to work for him. He also reminds him of TGA, a female employee whom he's been training for the past 10 years to become his successor instead of Chris. Desperate for money, Chris invites his friend home and asks him to hand him a capital amount to start trading, but his friend genuinely shows concern for him. He suggests working for his father to support himself financially in this poor economy. He also advises him to stay away from Scarlett, his girlfriend, who is 5 years younger than him. Chris heads out for a while, and when he returns, he finds Grace fallen on the floor. He shows concern finally, and gives her the salary for her operations. Grace breaks the news that she will be gone for the next 2 weeks because of her operation and that her daughter will be taking her place. Chris worries that she might not be as good as Grace, but Grace assures him otherwise. The following night, Chris calls a girl and hooks up with her at home. When he wakes up the next day, he yells at the girl for calling him babe and tells her to get out of his house. He quickly showers and gets ready to work for his father. On his way out, he meets Grace's daughter, Prosper, cooking breakfast for him in the kitchen. He scolds Prosper for barging into his home without any notification and judges her name choice, but Grace tolerates his behavior. Once Chris leaves without having breakfast, she lets out her anger on the veggies she's cutting. Now, Chris shows up at his father's company and asks him where to start working, but his father takes offense at his approach and tells him to get himself hired from the HR department like any other employee. Disappointed, Chris walks out and consults the HR manager, who gives him a small desk space to work from and tells him to report his daily work progress to the IT manager. After the job hours, Chris visits his mother for dinner and vents about the problematic relationship he has with his father. Speak of the devil, and his father arrives to ruin dinner for him. Chris asks him to lend him one of his cars because his car broke down in the crash, and he didn't have the money to get it fixed. His father suggests taking the bus to get to work every day and taking full responsibility for his actions instead of expecting handouts from his father just because he's rich. Chris's mood gets ruined, so he returns home and gets Prosper to make him dinner instead. The following night, he goes to bed with a new woman, who wakes up earlier than him and steals all his expensive stuff. She also steals his phone and storms out of there. Lucky for Chris, Prosper bumps into the girl and finds out she has stolen from Chris. Her yelling wakes Chris up. She makes him aware of the stealing part, but Chris starts scolding her for the way she handled the situation, which allows the girl to escape. Prosper grows tired of his behavior already, but keeps bottling up her anger. When Chris shows up to work and gets into the staff meeting, his father asks him about the work document he was assigned. Chris uses the robbery excuse to justify why he didn't work, but his father makes fun of him for not involving the cops and adjourns the entire meeting because of him. Chris slowly starts taking responsibility to dodge the scrutiny of his father. At first, he sells his MacBook to get his car fixed and bring it back home. When he heads inside with his friend, he finds Prosper waiting for him. He gets mad at her for not leaving the house yet, and when she tries to explain her reason, he tells her to shut up and leave. In the next scene, Chris is seen presenting some new ideas to support his father's business in the group meeting. Everyone likes his ideas and vouches for Chris, so his father allows them to implement Chris's ideas right away. He finally gets pleased by Chris and invites him over for dinner, where he clearly tells Chris to become a one-woman man to get back the privilege of a monthly allowance. Finding it nearly impossible, Chris returns home. The next morning, Prosper shows up late, so Chris scolds her once again. She calls Grace in secret and tells her that she wishes to quit, but Grace begs her to drag herself for more time because this job pays their bills. On the other hand, the IT manager entrusts Chris with a drive containing their customer responses. Chris turns a blind eye to it and goes to rekindle things with Scarlett, who confronts him about his infidelity and finally breaks up with him. Chris returns home not feeling well, so he vents about his problems with his friend. The next day, Chris skips breakfast again and weirdly asks Prosper if she thinks he's a bad person. Prosper finally lets out her anger and gives Chris the toughest reality check about his situation, due to which Chris faints. When he wakes up, he finds himself naked in bed and Prosper feeding him soup. She explains that she was doing the cold press, for which she took off his clothes, but he still gets offended and tells her to leave. As time goes by, Chris's father finds out that Chris is skipping work, so he scolds his seniors at work and visits Chris with another man, who takes back Chris's car. Chris begs his father not to take his car, but he lets him know that he's being punished for skipping work without permission. Chris confines himself to his room and cries himself to sleep. When he wakes up, he gives Prosper the rest of the day off, but since she had witnessed his quarrel with his father, she advises him to patch things up with his father before it's too late, and shares how she got her father killed in a house fire that she started by mistake and how she feels guilty to this day. Chris sympathizes with her and lets her go. The next day, he approaches Prosper in the kitchen and asks her to pretend to date him so he can get an allowance from his father. Hesitant at first, she says no, but when he offers to pay her along with some other benefits, she agrees. At the end of their bargain, Chris forces Prosper to shake hands, which makes her uncomfortable. Moving on, Chris and his friend help Prosper pick an appropriate wardrobe and collectively whip up a fake story of how they met and fell in love. When Chris takes her to his parents' house, his mother immediately grows a liking to Prosper, but her father stays on alert. During dinner, when Chris tells his father the fake story of how he met Prosper, he gets into a fight with him. Prosper meddles and starts talking about the father's business, which distracts the father from scolding Chris. The father becomes impressed by Prosper's vision and her choice of words. Prosper also praises Chris and convinces his father that he's a good and responsible man underneath all the rust, so his father accepts Prosper as family and welcomes her. Appreciating Prosper's performance, Chris drops her off at her place for the first time. Up next, the father promotes Chris to a superior position and mends his relationship with him. As time progresses, Chris starts getting along with Grace and also gets his car back. Soon, his allowance gets reinstated, so Prosper hugs him in excitement, which gives both of them butterflies. They drink champagne to celebrate their success, and they start flirting with each other. Before they move to the next step, Prosper leaves. When Chris goes to the office the next day, he hears from his father that he's arranged for him to study and get his managerial training from abroad before becoming the director of his father's company. Chris shares the news with his friend on his way home and vents about how he doesn't want to do that. His friend figures that he's started falling for Prosper. It turns out to be true when Chris heads home and confesses his feelings to Prosper. He gets quite the opposite answer because Prosper wants the money he promised and wishes to leave right away. She nearly leaves the house, but Chris faints once again. She breaks into tears while trying to pick him up. The scenes cut to Chris's father bringing him back home from the hospital. When he gets home, Prosper looks after him, and they both end up kissing. On the other hand, we see the chief discussing giving away his liver so Chris can live. As Chris and Prosper continue dating, Grace finds out about them and disapproves of their relationship, even when Chris confesses his love for Prosper. He soon gets fatally ill, but he keeps it from Prosper and continues dating her. He even takes short breaks from work, only to see her at home. They end up sleeping together that night. The next day he takes Prosper to her parents, where his situation starts worsening. Prosper finds through Chris's mother that not only is he ill but he's also going abroad in a few days. She feels like she was lied to, which is why she storms out of there. While the mother goes after her, the father stays back to comfort Chris. The mother brings Prosper back and leaves her to thaw things out between her and Chris. The two openly communicate and make peace with the decision to leave for abroad, but Chris starts having a seizure. He is hospitalized, and the doctor advises the chief not to send their son abroad in such a deteriorating condition. The doctor predicts that Chris will die in a few days, so the mother convinces the father to confess his true feelings for Chris. The father visits Chris in his room and breaks down in tears while admitting that he was being harsh on him for his betterment. The two leave behind the rocky past and mend their broken relationship. Prosper leaves everything to take care of Chris in his final moments as his seizures become worse. She gets to confess her love one last time before Chris passes away peacefully. Prosper finds his journal and breaks into tears to see his confessions about loving her. A few years later, we see Prosper visiting Chris's grave with a son, revealing that she did get pregnant on the night they hooked up. Here, the movie ends.
Thanks for watching the video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more amazing recaps like that.